Hello and welcome to Cooking the Books with Heather. Today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. I am not cooking out of a cookbook today. I am going to be making strawberry jam, and we're going to be making it just like my husband's grandmother does, which is basically using the recipe on the insert in this package of pectin. So, I've already got everything measured out. In fact, these strawberries, I measured and froze several years ago actually, but it was a really good year for strawberries. We got a really good batch and it makes delicious jam. So I'm really excited that we have, even though it is strawberry season and we could have gone and picked them and used fresh ones, we had these in the freezer to use up, and they've been in there a while, so it's time to do that. I've had them in this pan just defrosting because I forgot to take them out last night like I kind of planned to. And they're almost completely defrosted now. So what you do is you cut up your strawberries and then you mash them. I think I used my potato masher and measured them after I mashed them. Since it's on the insert, I'm just gonna go ahead and tell you it was 5 cups of mashed strawberries. And I just put them in a freezer bag and froze them. And so now what we're going to do is add the pectin from the package. And if I have done this the wrong way before and added the sugar in this stage and it did not work well at all. The first batch I followed the instructions perfectly and everything went fine, and then the second batch I made ever in my life, I added the sugar too early. So they say that you add the pectin to the strawberries and then you bring it up to a full rolling boil on high heat. So I've got my heat on high now and it should come up pretty quickly here. But you're supposed to stir it the whole time. Let me verify I'm doing this correctly. The process is pretty much the same no matter what kind of jam you do, and there are recipes for triple berry, orange marmalade, hot pepper relish, blackberry, apricot, pretty much whatever kind of jam that you would like to make you can, but strawberry is big in our house. So yes, bring it to a full rolling boil and then you add the sugar. So now, while this is coming up to a boil, I was going to let you know I have already sterilized some jars, and I have the pan I use. It's not really a canner, but this is what I could find the first time we went to go make jam. It's a pasta pot, but it fits 6 half-pint jars of jam. Can't do anything larger, but it'll work. But I've got the water that I used for that still just staying kind of warm, so it doesn't take so long to heat up when I go to process them later to get them to close, to seal. And all of my tools have been sterilized. All of the lids have been sterilized, even though they don't actually touch, any of the part where the jars are and the other lids. You can follow instructions online for that. It's really easy. The hard part was having a pot to do this in, I think, because it has to cover it by like about an inch. So we are coming up to a boil now. And these tools, so I bought a basic set of canning tools. You can probably get them at like Walmart or Target or whatever. Same with the jars. This is very important. This is the funnel that fits right in. And this is the other very important one. This helps you lift the jars out of the water. So those are the ones that are absolutely necessary. The rest of them I use for some things, but I could live without them. But those 2 things are really necessary. I was also going to say, they say you can add like a half of a tablespoon or something of butter or margarine to this to keep it from foaming. I never do that. I don't know if Grandma does that. Apparently Grandma does do that, but I don't. So And you're supposed to skim the foam off before you put it in the jars with a metal spoon. I don't know. That didn't go very well the one time I tried it. I might try it. We'll see. But this is going to go very quickly. All right, so we've got a full rolling boil, and now we add all of the sugar. I have it pre-measured here because it is a lot of sugar. It is 7 cups of sugar for 5 cups of strawberries. And the ratios are slightly different for the different fruits here. So, and now we're going to stir this up, bring it back to a rolling boil, and boil it for exactly 1 minute. So I'm gonna set a timer here, and as soon as I feel like it is back up to a rolling boil, I am going to, and I'm gonna get all the sugar all mixed in. As soon as I think that it's back up to a rolling boil, I am going to start my timer, and then it will be done. This part, actually making jam, is very simple, especially when you use pectin. Some fruits have enough pectin, you don't have to add it. You can basically make it with just fruit and sugar. Some of the recipes have a little bit of lemon juice in them, but this one doesn't. Strawberries are kind of on the tart side, so they don't necessarily need it, but some sweeter fruits might need a little bit of acidity just because it'll make it taste better and not just sickly sweet. But yeah, it's really, really simple, and it goes very quickly. The pectin is just sort of a crutch, and it helps you don't have to boil it forever to bring the pectin out. In, like, I think in marmalade or something, a lot of times you can make it with just if you have the rinds in it. Most of the oranges have enough pectin in them. I don't know which fruits do and which fruits don't, but there are tons of recipes on the internet and recipes right here, but of course all those use pectin. And so this will be a relatively set jam. Some jams are pretty thin. This one won't be. This one will be if I do everything right, it will set pretty firm. And it makes 8-ounce jars of jam, which is what these little half-pint jars are. And I have one that is larger. I would say that it's just because whatever's left over is going to go in that, and that's going to go in the fridge, and that's what we're going to eat first, which is true. But also it's because it's the only other jar I could find of a small size. So I have quart jars, which to process I have to use a really huge canner. I think we're at a rolling boil now. It doesn't go away, so we're gonna hit my timer. But sometimes it makes a little bit more than, I mean, it just depends exactly how much you measure or whatever. And you don't want to overfill your jars, because then they won't seal correctly. They need a little bit of air space. Got a little bit of a jam popped on me. Because you can see this is why I'm doing this in such a large pan, because when it boils, it grows. Turning it down a little bit because my high is pretty high, but it does say to do this at high heat. All right, that's my end, and I need to take it off of the heat. And now the jam is really done. And all I have to do is ladle it into my jars. I'm gonna let that burner cool down a little bit before I move it back over there. But as you can see, That was really quick, really easy. I'm gonna see how it goes if I try to skim it now. Let me get a large metal spoon, just a second. All right, so I think that's probably cool enough now so I can bring it back up to a boil. I'm gonna try to skim this a little bit. And now you do want to try to keep this warm until you put it in your jars, because you don't want it to set up before it gets in the jars. I'm gonna call that good. I skimmed some of it off. And now, got a ladle, and I'm gonna try not to spill too much of this, but I have my, I have a kitchen towel down underneath the jars to catch anything I spill, or almost anything I spill. And you want to fill these up, leaving at least, I think, a ½ inch of headspace, usually sort of up to the rim. I don't know if you can see that, but sort of up to this rim on the glass is good, but you don't want to go too much higher than that. And now I'm just going to fill the jars and probably not talk very much. So, all right. At this point, I'm fairly certain that I'm going to have more than will fit into all of my jars. So that'll be fun. We're going to see if it'll all fit in here, but I don't think so. We have found a few more jars, which are pretty clean because they've been inside, and they're always clean before they've been inside a cabinet, and they're always clean before they go in there. So I'm just going to bring this up to a boil and process these like I did those. While we do that, I'm gonna go ahead and put the lids on the jars that we've already gotten ready and need to process. But before you actually put the seal, the lid on it, you wanna kind of make sure that your threads and your top don't have any jam on them, because otherwise it may not seal properly. That one doesn't matter as much. So far I think I'm doing pretty good. I got some on the outside of at least one of the jars, but not so much. That one has a little bit. All right. So now I'm just going to put these on top. And then the lids just sort of get, the bands get sort of finger tightened. You don't want to tighten them really, really tight, because you do want the air comes out of, all right, sorry. Just 1 second. To make sure I sterilize those properly. The air comes out from under the lid and creates a vacuum, and there's wax on the underside here that melts in the hot water and seals it. So it kind of creates a vacuum and melts the wax, and everything's good. Which is why you don't reuse the tops. You reuse the bands, but not the part with the wax on it, because I've already used up that wax seal. I keep them, and if I just put something in that I'm not sealing, like vinaigrette or something, if I make it in a jar like this, I keep them so I have them, so we have a full lid. But when you're actually processing them, and you're actually going to use it as a jelly jar, you need to not reuse that. So these two, this one I can't really, the large one I can't really, I don't have the pot to process it in right now, so, and our family will go through it relatively quickly, and this one will go in the refrigerator without being processed. We'll use those up. And now, bring this back up to a boil. It shouldn't take long because it's very hot. And I'm going to process, I think I can do 5 or 6 in here. See, very hot at a time. But I go ahead and put in a couple and see where my water comes. So real canners have like a rack that you put these on, and then they go in all on the rack. You lower that in. This is what I got, and it works okay. So, and you can see some of the air coming out of the jars. And so we have to process these for 10 minutes. Jam is 10 minutes, jelly is 5. Jam, the difference between jam and jelly. Jelly is made with just juice, whereas jam is made with the whole fruit. So it has pieces of strawberry in here instead of just like strawberry juice. So yeah, we're gonna bring it up to a boil, let it boil for 10 minutes, take it out. And the big part is you'll start hearing them pop, and in a couple hours you can, when they've cooled a little bit, you press on the lid, and if they make a popping sound, that's bad, because that means there's not a vacuum. This one's not processed yet, so that's expected. But once they've come out of processing and vacuum sealed themselves, you should not be able to push the middle and hear that pop. That's the big thing. So yeah, we're probably not going to film this whole thing for like 10 minutes, but we'll come back and let you know how this turned out. Let you see the viscosity, the texture of it. Yeah, and show you our jam. On this episode of Cooking the Books with Heather, you watched me make something a little bit different, not from a cookbook, but you watched me make strawberry jam. And I wanted to show you guys that, so it set up very nicely. It doesn't, I don't know if you guys can see, but you can see the headspace. It's jelly, it's jam, it's not liquid at all. And my husband's already had some. And even the ones that we put in the refrigerator set up and kind of sealed up. And you see that it is just the texture it should be, nice and jelly-like. So that was great, because the last time I made it, maybe the time before that. Anyway, one time I made it, did not turn out so well. But at that point, I didn't follow directions. So follow directions, and it works. And it's not that hard. Canning it is kind of the worst. You can make smaller batches with or without pectin. You can buy even liquid pectin. So if you don't want to can it, you can make a smaller batch with the liquid pectin, because unlike the powder is kind of hard to measure out and get a smaller batch, but I think the liquid might be easier to do a small batch and maybe just make a quart that you can put in a jar in your refrigerator and use up, and rather than having these in the cabinet. But yeah, husband already tried it. I haven't tried it myself yet, but he says it's perfect, delicious, exactly like it's supposed to be, and just like grandma makes. So, in fact, I don't think he said that, but I think it is. Anyway, if you enjoyed this, give me a thumbs up, and come back next week and watch me make something else.